Welcome in. This was a special event watching live the House Committee on Financial Services. This was a testimony from Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. He seems to be doing a lot of these lately, as is Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, also sitting down doing his testimony, getting grilled on a number of different subjects, all of which are incredibly important right now. And I have to say, the overall tone of this whole thing, as I was taking notes, is that holy crap, we're sliding backwards. And we better keep our eye on the ball, because right now, this is do or die time for the United States right now. With all of these states going back under lockdowns, Arizona, California, you heard from Colorado there at the very end of the testimony saying we're seeing, our state and local governments are being squeezed. Florida with a record number of cases surging right now. So this was really the tone of this whole committee hearing for the Fed Chair and Secretary Mnuchin. So let me just go through some of the things that I think stood out to me and include those in the thing here. So we got Secretary Mnuchin saying basically we're monitoring economic conditions closely. Certain industries such as construction are recovering quickly, while others such as retail and travel are facing longer term impacts and may require additional relief. He said we're also looking forward to working with Congress on a bipartisan basis on this next round of stimulus in July on any further legislation that may be necessary. Look, let's take that off the table. Nancy Pelosi, we did get word that Nancy Pelosi is getting phone calls over the weekend from Republicans calling for additional items that they want in this next round of stimulus. And according to sources, this next stimulus will be bigger than anticipated, upwards of that $3 trillion, which is what the Democrats had pushed for in that HEROES Act that's sitting on the Senate's desk right now. So right now, he said, regarding that additional aid, we will work with Democrats on this. We're going to make sure that we have this on a bipartisan basis. And it seems like everyone's moving towards bigger is better approach. Bigger is better is what I'm gathering. We got some news on the PPP loans, which run out today. Those stop today. So GOP Representative Patrick McHenry of North Carolina asked Steven Mnuchin about that directly. He said, what are you going to do with that money? There's $134 billion left right now on the PPP program, $130 billion, and it looks like they may want to repurpose that money. Maybe not necessarily extending it to businesses again, the same ones that got loans before, but maybe repurposing it for other programs. So keep your eye here, because earlier today we were hearing from different members of Congress who have different proposals that they've put forward where they would want to have that PPP program continue and enable you to get a second loan. If you've already got a first loan, you could get a second one under the new PPP money that's left over. You would, under that, have to really be a 100 employee threshold instead of the 500. That's under a couple of the proposals. So Mnuchin says there appears to be bipartisan support in the Senate for repurposing that money to sectors that are hardest hit. So repurposing or rolling them back out once again to some of the businesses that might need a second loan who are hard hit. Hotels came up quite a bit. Did you hear that tonight? Hotels came up quite a bit, and that got brought up multiple times. Some of the travel and hospitality industries that have been crushed. There is additional support from Mnuchin and Powell on hotels and getting direct stimulus to those industries that have been hardest hit. One other big theme of this was inequalities in our financial system, which is absolutely the case. Anyone that doesn't think that there are inequalities in our financial system, the inability for certain minority groups to get loans based on the color of their skin. Heck, the National Association of Realtors, 50 years ago, basically had it written into their code that you were not allowed to basically loan to people of color. If someone was interested, this is a quote actually from the National Association of Realtors guidelines, that if a person of color wants to buy in a particularly white neighborhood, you should basically talk them out of it. I'm paraphrasing, of course. So yes, there's been inequalities in our financial system, and I have to say, there were a couple of times that got brought up, and both Secretary Powell, Fed Chair Powell and Secretary Mnuchin both raised their hand and said, we believe that there are inequalities in this system and we need to fix it. And we need to go beyond just legislation to fix it. And it seemed like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like they might be open to reparations. That got brought up, and it seemed like they were both on board for some sort of reparations. We don't know. I mean, this is just the beginnings of this discussion, but it seemed like from a number of the House members who asked that question, they were open to that. Beyond just legislation, I saw a number of tweets about that very same thing. They're like, wow, did that just happen? Yeah, it did. So that was another big theme of the event, the hearing. One big piece I did hear was this brick wall in July. And we all see July being the major problem right now as unemployment benefits dry up, as PPP dries up, all of these other programs come to a grinding halt. The House member, and I forget who was at the very end there, from the member from Colorado with the Broncos mask. Off the top of my head, I don't have his name in front of me. He did bring up the fact that we are about to hit this brick wall, and he has a huge concern about unemployment benefits and the need for us to figure something out, and state and local governments. So Secretary Mnuchin did say that he was open to state and local governments getting some sort of assistance in place for state and local governments. He'd be happy to work with Republicans and Democrats on a bipartisan basis to make that happen in the next version of the CARES Act. Because he said, look, we have the HEROES Act, it's already on your desk. It's already on the desk of the Senate. Huge provisions in there for state and local governments. What are we doing? These firefighters, these police officers, these healthcare workers are being crushed. States are drying up their revenue right now. New Jersey, workers are having to be furloughed because they can't afford to pay their workers. Then we had we had those direct questions on state and local questions, and Mnuchin answered those. Powell, he had a comment, and I thought this was interesting. Chairman Powell said that he thought the worst part of a potential second wave of coronavirus is that it would undermine public confidence, which is what the economy needs, Powell says. Public confidence. And so if we suddenly go back into another phase of lockdown, businesses are continuing to dry up, restaurants are going into closure mode again in certain states, bars, all of those things being closed up, water parks, etc., we are in for a world of hurt. So we need that public confidence. And so he also said we are open to doing another round of incentives, extending the central bank's lending facilities to cover asset-based lending markets, which represent a $500 billion market. Powell said the next stimulus legislation should find ways to help hotels and other industries hit hardest by the pandemic. So again, Nancy Pelosi has been fielding phone calls from Republicans who've been asking, can we get this thing in the next stimulus? Can we get this thing in? So she said, we know we will have a bill. We're going to have it very soon. She said Treasury Secretary Mnuchin knows there has to be legislation. They're going to be friendly. She says they haven't had face-to-face talks yet with Mnuchin because that will come towards the end of the negotiation process until late July. And then President Trump on Monday said we will be doing another stimulus package. It will be very good. It will be very generous. And so those are some of the biggest highlights, I think, from today's committee hearing. That undertone or that overtone of a second wave of coronavirus, or really the continuation of this first wave of coronavirus. So we did get to hear from those committee members interviewing Secretary Mnuchin and Fed Chief Jerome Powell. That is some breaking news that I wanted to bring to you, and that is the Roundup. Those are my biggest sort of excerpts from it. I watched it for 2 hours, but those are some of my high-level takeaways. There will be new legislation. There will likely be direct stimulus checks to the American people. There will likely be a push for a larger, bigger is better approach for this stimulus package, according to some of the testimony today, as well as hearing from Nancy Pelosi, a bigger is better approach from Republicans. Look, underlying all of this is President Trump's re-election efforts, and many Republicans who are running for re-election. So to get stimulus in the hands of those people that need it is absolutely going to be important for their re-election. I saw many of you commenting today. You said, look, I'm a Republican, but I will not vote for a Republican that does not pass another round of stimulus. I will not vote for that person. That's not just one person. There was many people, and I might be anecdotal just in my live stream, but if you feel that way, I'm sure a lot of other people will feel that way as well. This is not a time for politics. These industries and people are being crushed right now with unemployment benefits drying up here in the next few weeks, and businesses having to go back under lockdown and laying off employees left and right. So we don't have answers yet on the PPP program, folks. By the end of the week, it appears we will have something on a new PPP program, whether it will be an extension of the current program so that you could reapply and have a second forgivable loan for small businesses, or will that money be reallocated to other hard-hit industries and taken out of that kitty and put in some other pool of money? So we'll have updates on that. So the next big thing on the horizon, folks, is July 2nd. That is the June jobs report. Now, I think under other circumstances, had reopening gone better, the June jobs report might be more important. But the fact that we're going back under a lockdown now, and states are closing back up with massive record spikes in cases, the European Union just announced today that they are going to disallow any travel from the United States into the European Union. That's huge. That is huge news. So under normal circumstances, that June jobs report, if that was the only data point, might have been, the thing that moves Congress one way or the other. But I think given the fact that now we have this massive wave of virus cases going up again, that's just going to be one small data point. But again, July 2nd, we'll keep our eyes on that June jobs report. So thank you guys so much for joining us for our special event tonight. Grover was listening the whole time as well. He's right here on my lap. Say night-night, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's been a long day. Thank you so much for subscribing if you're new here, so you get those notifications when we go live and when we do shows on the economy and your personal finance. Much love to all of you. I hope you guys have a great afternoon, great night,